Ryan Raghoo,
Joe Clifton.
welcome to the show. Thank you for
Thank you.
coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I just want to start with quite a broad question, and we'll see where it goes. In your TED talk, you said that you had a personal war with the word disabled.
I
Can you
did.
unpack that for us, please?
Straight in. Okay, so my personal beef with the word disabled is the connotations that come with it. So if I think about my experiences growing up and the experiences of everybody I know with disability, whenever you tell someone that you are disabled, immediately they've got like a picture in their head or they've got a perception of what that means, what you're going to be capable of. So if I relate a little bit to my personal experience, growing up with a disability, you've got physios, you've got teachers, you've got maybe even family members, friends, always talking about the things that you can't do
Mm,
because of your disability. And for me, I just think that's the wrong way of looking at it. Like, I personally don't think there's anything I can't do, which might be my detriment, but I've not found something yet. So I just think it's the wrong way of looking at things.
so how do you think we should view kind of, I don't know what, what word would you replace it with?
I don't think you need a word. I think
Hmm.
that's part of my issue is why do we need to like shoehorn people into like a category or a label? Like, okay, you move differently, you might walk differently, you use a chair, you're blind, you're deaf, like I don't know, don't leave anything out. You learn differently. Like, so what? Everyone does something differently.
Mm,
Why does it need a category?
mm. Yeah, I get that. I mean, I've often thought sometimes I'd rather just think of it as I walk a bit differently than having this word of like this diagnosis. But then I guess if you don't have a word for it, don't have a diagnosis, then the system won't give you the treatment that you need and things like that.
But your
But
diagnosis is different from disability.
right,
Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a medical, you and I both have cerebral palsy. I don't know if you've got anything, but
No.
sorry, mate,
he's a normie.
you're missing out.
Do you nickname people that? They're a normie.
ABs we call them.
ABs.
Oh, right.
ABs, yeah, fucking ABs. Can I swear?
Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, too late now. The condition you've got, which explains whatever's like going on with you, doesn't necessarily need to be then have another label to group us all together. Because if you think about it, if you had us in a room as people with physical disabilities, you had a chair user, well, they couldn't get in the room because upstairs, a blind person, a deaf, we wouldn't have that much commonality at all.
Mm,
But we're all grouped into this like group label of disability, which includes people with autism, Asperger's, ADHD, etc., etc., etc. Like the list goes on. Is it actually an appropriate grouping of people? What do you think?
it's difficult, isn't it? You need a way. I mean, you need a way to identify that this person might need some extra support with stuff. I don't think it'd be right to just carry on as if everyone's exactly the same. But I also don't like the dis in the disabled. Do you know what I mean? It's just like you're right that there's negative connotations there. It's just differently able, isn't it? Like I don't feel like unless I guess it's different for everyone. But
I understand the argument that they need extra support.
hmm.
Who's they?
The,
We. Joking, joking.
because of physical limitations.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think to myself as independent, but I think I'd still need support. Like, I still need to have a wheelchair for 'em. I mean, I guess I could pay for one myself, but it helps that there are support services out there. But I think you're right that a word with negative connotations doesn't help anyone.
But like, I don't think I'm on board with like differently abled. I think that comes with like a whole different set of connotations, and then yeah, like the whole inspiration porn that comes with being, oh, they're not disabled, they're just differently abled. No, fuck off. Like, oh, keep swearing.
It's all right. It's all good. It's all good.
There's something different about that person. I've just said it. So hard to get away from language. My point is, and maybe I've got caught up in semantics, but language is powerful.
Mm,
And how people choose to identify. So some people will very strongly identify with the fact that they're disabled.
mm,
For me, there's a lot of other pieces to my identity.
mm.
And what I don't like is in the society we live in, you are identified first by the fact that you were disabled.
That's a good way of thinking about it. And I think that's a tendency for people where they will identify with a label they've been given, even if it's not like a disability. It could be like a place where you grow up, or the fact that you've got like you don't think you're good looking, or something that happened to you, like you hang on to the way we're perceived by the world.
Well, what's the worst part about being disabled?
Have you got an answer?
Uh, yes, I think
Is it people that like sort of you people look at you different,
the worst
attract
part
attention?
about being disabled is living in a world that's not set up for you. So we don't live in a world that is accessible. It's just a reality. Now we're both ambulant to a degree. Depends on who you're asking whether we should be ambulant, but we can walk around. But actually, even walking around, there's a lot of trip hazards. If you're then in a chair, well, majority of the UK is not actually that accessible. If you then travel outside that, the world is not accessible. If you then think about like different disabilities, if you're blind, like we're in a beautiful part of the world, probably not great.
Mm,
So the world is not set up for people with different conditions. So that's definitely part of it. For me, I'd say the pain element and the fact that things take you longer. Um, and then, yeah, the way you're perceived, like people have an expectation. Generally, it's quite low. Like they have a low expectation of you. And it's like, well, you don't know me. You don't know what I'm capable of. Why are you making that judgment before you've got to know me? What about
mm,
you?
mm. Yeah.
I've forgotten the question.
No, no, I haven't. It's all right. I think being different is hard until you can rationalize it and get over it. Like when I was a kid, I used to find it hard just getting stared at everywhere.
Hmm.
But once you kind of get over that in your own head, then that's not really an issue. I think if I was in a chair all the time, I think Ryan's point of stuff being not accessible would be difficult. Do you remember when we went to Colchester and we were at London Liverpool Street, and I had my day chair and all of the lifts in the underground were broken, so we had to carry my day chair on the escalator.
Yeah,
Like, imagine if I was a paraplegic and couldn't walk at all. Like, what would we do then? Like, I see Adi Debutant on Instagram. Have you seen like the
yeah.
reels where he's just like moaning about lifts and not being great and train services being crap and stuff? And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's real at the end of the day.
So how do you overcome a disability?
I mean, how did you rationalize it? How did you? We talked earlier about the angry phase that we all go through. How did you get out of the angry phase?
Yeah, I don't know if you ever do overcome it. I think there's probably, well, I don't want to speak for everybody because I don't know people's experiences, but I find there's probably a piece in all of us that have whatever condition it is that at times we wish we didn't because of our experiences of the world. In terms of getting over it, I think you either do things or achieve certain things that make you realize maybe this isn't that bad, but I don't know. I think certainly with age, you become less concerned, or I certainly became less concerned about what other people thought, and you become more sure of yourself as a person, which probably has nothing to do with disability and everything to do with the growing up process that we're all a bit uncertain of who we are when
Mm,
we're younger. And then you kind of work out, well, these are my people, or this is how I am, and you either like it or you don't. I guess there's an added element of that when you've got like a disability or a condition that means that you move differently because you are seen as different everywhere you go. And that is hard to get over. If everywhere you go, you don't fit in, you will internalize that.
mm,
Getting over it, I don't know if you get over it, but if you surround yourself in a community of people that are similar, and that's why Virtual Boss was, a massive part of my life now, and why I truly love the sport is it's one of the only environments where you can get people of every different disability. No one cares. You're all just playing sport, and it
mm,
doesn't matter.
mm. Yeah, I like what you said there about how um, having a more solid identity to live with helped in the getting over just the wrong kind of phrase to use, but help kind of rationalize the
Mhm.
fact that you're different. It's like, yeah, I am different, but that's who I am, and I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I really like that kind of point. I want to ask what the process was of you going from the feeling of I don't like the use of language here around the word disabled. I think it has negative connotations and it's limiting. What's the process then of having that feeling to then creating like the charity that you did and speaking about this stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll try and like synopsize my life journey in a few minutes. So I was a very angry young man, very angry. I was at World Juniors representing GB for the first time, and I sat there in a mini Olympic village, and I was just frustrated. I was like, "This is all wrong." Like, I was constantly comparing, like, if I was able-bodied, what would my experience be at this championships? And because I knew coaches that had been to the equivalent, like the World Able-bodied Juniors and stuff, I just got really stuck in this comparison of all, as disabled athletes, we were just treated so differently.
And what were those differences like?
Just like, how do I explain it? The scale of it, the thought and the planning that went into it. Like, for example, the transport to and from venues. Like, I don't, I don't really know how to explain it because that was,
Did it feel kind of as it was always the
it was an
the
afterthought.
second thing?
It was a massive afterthought, and the like detail and attention. Like, the first time you represent your country, that's meant to be like a massive achievement. Like, it's something as an athlete you'll understand this way. Something that we all strive for, and a lot of us never get there. And then you get there, and you're like, oh, is that it? Like, I'm still arguing for the same stuff I'll be arguing in day-to-day life. So I came off the back of that and thought, you know what? There's a lot of people that do a lot of thinking, a lot of talking, and it never goes anywhere. I sat there with pen and paper and just wrote the word down, disabled, over and over and over again, crossed that out, split it in half, started getting deep into language, disenabled. I was like, this is like a very negative, it comes with a lot of negative connotations. Like, if you think of, I don't know all the words now, but every word that starts with this in my head, it's negative. And I was like, well, why don't we flip the switch on that? And then I started just brainstorming around language and came up with the idea of enabled, not disabled. And it's not to say that I'm not disabled, but the theory or my thought process behind that was we should be enabling people. So if every time you met somebody with disability, rather than going, you can't do that because of your condition, what if you started with, what can you do? What would you like to do? And for me, I thought the subtle but powerful shift of language where that person's disability is not the sole focus of your interaction would make a real difference. And I just started talking more and more about it and thinking, what can I do? And you need to have a platform. So learn how to use platforms, which I'm still bad at now, but putting stuff out there and started speaking about it. I guess it just grew from there.
So did you start like talking about this stuff on social media as a beginning point, or
Not really, no. I got invited to do a school talk and it went really well. And then that just kind of kicked off. And I put like tidbits out on social media, but I'm a little bit older than you guys and I don't really understand it. So, I've not got over a couple thousand followers because I just don't get the platforms. But it's more a case of I thought every time I had an interaction with somebody, if they could learn something new, then I've made a mark. Whether it was one person or 100 people. So I just started talking to people about what I thought. What do you think? In different environments. So at university, talk to lecturers. Well, why is the lecture not accessible? What can we do about it? And my big thing was I don't want to make anybody feel bad about something. It was about always being solution focused. So every discussion I enter into about disability, I also have the answer. I'm not saying that I have all the answers, but I always come with a solution. I thought, well, there's a lot of angry people, but being angry doesn't necessarily solve the problem. So for me, I wanted to be involved in discussions around solutions, like with why do you not have a wheelchair basketball team? Well, if it's funding, money's a poor excuse. Right, we can always find money for somewhere. Let's start a wheelchair basketball team. Why do para athletes at a university not get scholarships? The university never thought about it. Okay, well let's create that parity. Like for me, there's a lot of simple solutions to complicated problems. And maybe at times you just need someone to broker those conversations and be comfortable making other people feel uncomfortable to get to the right place. Does that
Mm,
make sense?
mm,
So there's a solution for everything.
I believe there's always a solution. Whether I found it or we found it, I think that's probably a big shift in my mindset in the last kind of 10 years that I've been on this journey. Is a lot of it was about what could I do as an individual, and you realize actually you're one person. The more people you can bring on the journey with you. So going back to like the concept behind enabled, not disabled, and my kind of life philosophy or theory on this, you've got cerebral palsy. To an extent, you get the issue. Jacob, no offense. As far as I know, you've not got cerebral palsy, therefore you don't get the issue. So I've always looked at it and gone, actually, people in the disabled community get it. So I don't need to work with them. I don't need to reach out. That's not my audience. You're my audience. Because if I get able-bodied people or non-disabled, which is probably the third time now, I still say AB. If I get the group of people that don't have it to understand, generally they're the decision makers. Like if you think about, you go deep up and at policy level, government level, etc. Most people that make decisions about the lives of disabled people are not disabled. So I need to reach them, not us.
mm. That's nice. Yeah. Well done. That was a good synopsis, man.
It's a lot to try and summarize.
Yeah. Talk to me about how you were those first few times when you had to speak about your story. Was that an easy thing? Were you kind of naturally all right at speaking and telling your story, or did it get better with time? What was that like?
I want to put this out there publicly. Growing up, I hated public speaking with a passion, which is so ironic that that's become my career. As a kid, my worst fear was like standing up in assembly and having to say something.
Mm,
And it is heavily linked to my disability because my hand shakes. So you're holding like a bit of paper or a microphone, or whatever. And I'm so self-conscious of how I look. And I'm also aware that you might not even pick this up, but because of my cerebral palsy, my voice changes at times. So that I have full control of my face. So when you're speaking, you're very self-conscious of that. When I got asked to share my story, people like just genuinely interested in what you were saying rather than how it was necessarily coming across. So it was certainly raw. It was very emotional as well, like talking about, my life and growing up and how you feel and stuff, which I don't know if I'd ever share that. So there was a process of me, okay, I've put this out there. Now I've got to ask myself some questions. But surprisingly, I wasn't nervous because it was so authentic to like the core of me. Like it's different when you're trying to say something that you're learning, but this is me. It became quite easy to talk about me and my experiences because they're mine, right? So you get comfortable in the fact that, well, this is my life. I'm just talking about things that happened.
mm. So really, the solution to um, the anxiety of it was to step into authenticity in a way. You know that you were just going out there and being you rather than worrying about how you're being perceived.
Yeah, and I think you get over the fact of how you might look because what you're delivering is so much more powerful.
Mm,
And then there was also the thing I used to tell myself is I'm never going to see these people again.
yeah.
Like for some of, well, I ended up having had several interactions with people, but generally you do a talk, you might have some interaction on Twitter, or whatever, but you never see that person again. So whatever they think, they're not going to tell you.
What's the
Mm,
worst that can happen?
What's the worst? And that is pretty much my philosophy in life: is what's the worst that can happen? Put yourself out there. Nobody's going to like you, but you know what? You'll find a group of people that are on board with your message. And as I said before, less about I, more about we. The more people you can get on board, the better. And I realized by speaking, that was a tool to do that. So one of my big goals was change the education system. Well, students don't need to change. Teachers need to change the medical system to the way that people understand our disability. Again, I'm not going to change you overnight. But if the interactions you have with therapists when you're a very young boy is positive and they understand you better, that will change your outlook to things. So for me, I wanted to go straight to like the highest source that could make the most amount of change, rather than like I don't want to say low level, but there's certain things where you're just not going to change that, and I wanted to always affect decision makers. I don't know how we've gone down that rabbit hole,
Nice though.
but yeah, you get the point.
I'm trying to get an idea of timelines. So when were you was this kind of beginning to speak and starting the charity and getting this word out and trying to elicit change? Was that after you got to the level you got to of sport?
No, so I started enabled in 2015. Um, in terms of my sporting career, that was a car crash of a year for me.
2015.
Yeah. In terms of my actual sporting career, it was horrible. Like possibly one of the worst years of my career. But I started it in that year, and it's just kind of continued along. Like the heights of my success in my sport arguably came like 3, 4 years later. So it was never about, I didn't see what I had achieved in sport as giving me like the right or the platform to talk about these things. I do see sport as a mechanism for change, which is why I'm very interested in it as like the if you look at if you take like racism and apartheid in South Africa and you look at what rugby did to bring a community, a very divided communities together, I think sport can do the same thing for people with disabilities and people without. And I've proved it through different research projects abroad. So I believe in that.
Can you give the people listening an idea of like what sport you did and what level you got to? And then I want to dig into a little bit about your mindset, competing, stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. So my sport was athletics. Even though my passion is basketball, I'm crap at basketball. But yeah, my sport was athletics. I started off as a 100-meter sprinter, um, and became a long jumper due to challenges along the way, which you can get into if you want. I finished my career as twice world champion for cerebral palsy games. I'm still the national record holder in long jump, even though I'm 5 years retired. I broke the 60-meter record on my debut. I've got a few records. So I think the highest ranking I ever achieved in the world was number 2, which is pretty good going.
And is that at long jump?
At long jump, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I never lost in the UK in 5 years of competing in the long jump. So I was pretty dominant when I was competing. But I never got to go to the Paralympics, which is the sore point.
Mm.
Why was that?
Why? Couple of reasons. So my face didn't fit, and that's probably hard for you guys to understand. And I don't want to, I don't mind going into it, but Paralympic sport is not the same as a bodied sport in the sense that in something like athletics for able-bodied athletes, if you're the fastest, you jump the furthest, you throw the furthest, if you are the best in your event, you are guaranteed to go. And there's trials, right? So if you win trials and on that day you are the number one guy, no one can dispute it. In my sport, in para-athletics, it's not like that. There's no trials. So whoever the selectors are, they can literally pick who they want. Now, when I say selection was a sore point for me, I qualified for the Paralympic Games in 2016. In my event and in my classification, I'm the only person to ever do so. Right, so when I qualified, Sky Sports were all over it, BBC were all over it. It's still online now, right? The record break or whatever. I flew to Australia to go and compete and came back with Paralympic qualification. Didn't get selected. To this day, I don't know why.
No one ever told you.
Now, it's not like there was like another guy that was better than me. I was the best there was in this country. It wasn't like there wasn't a spot for me on the team because you get allocated X amount of spots per team. I wasn't taken. And that's a sore point, because when you give up what I gave up and you put in the amount of work that I did, it's hard to then look, we all hope for like a meritocracy, and then you realize it doesn't matter.
So how did you recover from that?
I didn't, for a long time I didn't. So post 2016, I was very angry. I was struggling mentally, and I was considering retiring. And I spoke to my coach, and we kind of just had this like mantra.
Mantra.
There you go. The job's not done yet. That was our mantra. The job's not done yet. And we decided that I was going to be so good by the time the next games came around that there wasn't even going to be a question, right? So I think going into Rio, I was ranked 9th in the world, 3rd in Europe, which is good, right? For any athlete, that's good. We decided by the time Tokyo came around in 2020, I was going to be like top 3, top 5. You just couldn't dispute it. And we put like a plan in place, and every kind of month we just review stuff and we just say the job's not done. So I just had this amazing work ethic and ability to tune out any kind of negativity and whatever was going on in life, that when it came down to training, I could train the house down. Like, people wouldn't know what was going on in my personal life. I could be really struggling with stuff, but I'd just put in at training. And like post 2016, I went to the World Champs in Barcelona in 2018. I won the World Champs in terrible conditions at a terrible competition. I'd done everything I could to like get back to be in shape for 2020. I blew my knee out like in 2018, 2019, I blew my knee out year before Paralympics. And I didn't know then, but that was the last time I'd ever jumped. And it was like the last 3 years had been all about getting to that point. The jumps I was putting out in training were ridiculous. Like, I jumped 520 odd in training when my personal record was 460. Now, that might not sound a lot to you guys, but in my sport, that's a lot. And I was training so well, and then to have the injury, I just thought, oh, well, it's another injury, I'll recover. As we sit here today, I've still not recovered. So for 3 years, I did every rehab program under the sun, went to every specialist. We just don't know what the issue is. So there was like a process. I decided to retire because I realized I'd never get back to that level. And I went through this massive period of being lost as an individual, because so much of my identity was tied up with Ryan the athlete, to the point that I didn't know who I was without that.
It's quite a story, man. Wow.
What did training for something like that look like then, on that level?
I trained between 25 and 30 hours a week,
Right.
which in a grand scheme of a week maybe doesn't sound like a lot, but for the average person listening to this, you try and do that, you will die. Like, it's not for the average person. I'm talking, bearing in mind I was doing university at the same time. I never received a single penny of funding during my athletics career, despite what I achieved. So I was working 3 jobs. I had a business, or like a charity that I was trying to run as well. So I was a busy guy, right? I'd train in the morning, go to uni or go to work, come back in, train in the evening. No social life. Like, I coach sports now and I work with athletes and stuff, and I always talk about the balance between your sport and your life outside. I didn't have a life outside. First few years of my career, I chose to be single because I didn't want a distraction. That was the level of commitment I'm talking about. I'm talking about living an hour away from your family and not seeing them more than twice a year because that was taken away from training time. I can count in all the years I've been training, when I was competing, how many days I missed off training on my hands in like a 6, 7 year career. So for me, it was everything, right? The joke was, if you wanted to find me, I'll be at the track. Because I spent so much time in there, and it was amazing, right? The bedroom was like that window over there, and the track was behind it. So I'd leave my room, go to track, be there for 6 hours, go back to the room and come back. I lived and breathed it. I studied it. It was, yeah, it was my everything.
Was it hard to sacrifice that absence of social life?
It was easy. The more you win, the easier it becomes sacrifice. Or certainly it did I think for anybody actually, the better you get at something, the easier it is to put more time into it. So very quickly, I realized this was something I was not just all right at, but very good at. And I think because of my experiences growing up, that was a massive change for me. Like I didn't think I was good at anything. In secondary school, I wasn't allowed to do sport. So for 5 years, I did no physical activity. I grew up thinking I was bad at stuff. So to have something that you're a winner, people respect you for it. They don't care about the fact that you're disabled. I think that was a big thing for me as well. At the track, no one cared about my disability, right? I trained in a group of all able-bodied elite sprinters. Some of them went to the Olympic Games, some of them went to World Champs. Yeah, my coach, he's my family, but the guy that coached me and made my career, he coached everything, right? World champions, Olympic champions, Commonwealth champions, he'd done it all. So then to take on this like skinny disabled kid, if you want to get into that story, that's a good story, but he took on this kid that knew nothing about training and made me what I was. And all the while, just saw me as another athlete. Yes, he had to have an understanding of how my body works and recovery in different bits and pieces, and I couldn't just do the same program as everybody else. But he never once treated me as a disabled athlete.
So you can dedicate a lot of your success to the coach.
I would say I have like a handful of people in my life that I'm super, super close with, and he's in that group. I love him to bits.
On the starting line, if you're about to take a sprint, you've got a handful of individuals. Is it as simple as who wins, who runs the fastest, or is it due to other factors such as mentality, focus, etc.?
There's always other factors. So, you know, generally once you get to a certain level, everybody trains the same amount of time. So it's not like you're more, everyone talks about being more dedicated. Everyone, to get to a certain level, everyone's dedicated, right? You can't, you, to the level I got to in my sport, we're talking about sprinting and long jumping, like not a small sport where 25 people do it at that age group. It's the biggest sport in the UK. It's the most competitive sport there is outside of football and rugby and stuff for a solo individual sport. So it's hard to get to that level. Mentality wise, you couldn't beat me. I'd won certain races before I'd even started. And my mindset, my discipline, my focus. I used to play games before, right? Like I'd turn up late on purpose, or we'd all be in this cool room with like 2,000 athletes and everybody be warming up. I'd warm up at the hotel, I'd warm up outside. I always had the edge because the levels of self-belief, like to be a sprinter or a long jumper or to be like a solo athlete, you've got to have a level of self-confidence bordering on arrogance that you are so good that nobody can beat you. And I genuinely believe that.
So you got in their heads, and that's how you defeated them.
Well, it wasn't just that, but I was so deep in my own head, right? So, like, if you talk to people that was around me that time, whether you was like my partner or my coach is an exception, but my family, don't talk to me when I'm competing. Right? I was not a nice person to be around on race day because I had my protocols, I had my routine. Even down to what I ate, I'd eat the same meal the night before.
What was the pre-race or pre-jump meal?
What was the pre-jump meal? I think it was like some spiced chicken, sweet potato, and broccoli. Carbs, protein, veg, done.
We need.
Easy on the digestion. I knew I was never gonna have an issue with it.
But where did this like killer mindset come from? Like, surely Ryan at 9 years old wasn't like that.
Like, the young kid in the wheelchair, or well, not even a wheelchair, a buggy. Don't know if you remember these. Did you ever have a buggy growing up?
No, I like standing frame, if that's what you mean. But
Back in the
no.
day, the NHS used to give people or parents pushchairs before they gave them wheelchairs. See this big kid.
So you couldn't even propel it yourself.
No,
Oh, mate.
it's like no independence or like being carried around. that kid would never imagine the person I've become today. And like you look at how I've grown up, there's the things that have happened in my life and stuff, and everybody's had things happen in their life. But to be where I am now and achieve what I have, I couldn't tell you where that came from because I don't know. But I think you're exposed to certain environments, you go through certain things, and you find more within yourself that you thought you was capable of. And I think if you've got the right people around you, they push you to be the very best version. So my coach, Harry, he would never like I'd never cheated a drill, right? You're tired or your legs are hurt. My legs are always hurting. But however rough I was feeling, within reason we did something. That's not to say like if I can't walk that I need to go and do like 10 reps of 100 meters, but it was always push on. And I think to be like an elite level sprinter or long jumper, you just have to have it. And I grew up a lot of people in that environment that they never got past like club level competition, or the highlight for them was like a uni competition or whatever. But for me, this will tell you everything you need to know about my mindset. I would win like a national championships or an international competition, be on the podium with a gold medal, and my mindset was on reviewing the race or looking at the jump. I'd literally come off, want to see the video, be analysing it and critiquing it, whilst everybody else be smiling.
Did that make you not able to truly like sink in the level that you're at and the win that you had because you were always thinking about the next thing or how that race could be better or what training's like tomorrow?
It was always about the next thing, right? I don't have a lot of regrets, and it's not a regret, but a reflection would be I didn't enjoy the success of my career. And this advice that I give to a lot of younger athletes now is whatever you achieve, don't belittle it because you might never get a chance to do that again. For me, always thinking the next thing, like whether it's a world champs or Europeans or Olympics, whatever, like there's always a bigger goal. And then one day you bust your knee and there's no goal. So actually, I think it's important. It's not something I did, but it's very important that I'm not saying you need to like pat yourself on the back, but at the same time, like saying good job to yourself is a nice thing to do. I think it's something that as humans, don't know, we can all think of people that are very good at that, but generally we're not good at recognizing you've done good.
So celebrate, or what
Yeah,
is it?
celebrate the successes, man. Like enjoy the wins, whether it's big or small. Like go and have a nice meal, have a pint, like go see your friends, like enjoy the fact that you've done well at something because before you know it, your career is done. You might never do that thing that well again. Like sport's cruel. It's hard. Like,
So when you were getting ready for like a race, which might only last seconds, were you never sort of nervous going up to it because it's this one big moment where it will happen so quickly and you can't mess up?
I think there was always a part of me that was nervous, but no one knew. Again, I did a solo sport, so it's different to team sport. There's no one else to rely on. Now, if you play basketball, right? If you have a poor game, you've got four other guys around you that could pick you up. If they have a poor game, you could step up. It's just you. So I guess it's very simple. You either win or you lose. And I hate losing. So I won. So in terms of nerves, yeah, there's always that little like the voice in your shoulder or the doubt, like, am I good enough? I had that my whole career, like, am I actually good enough to be here? So the brain's a busy place for all of us. And whatever you do, the brain's a busy place. I think the skill set of the difference between like people that make it and don't is can you switch that noise off to focus on the moment? And luckily for me, I got it right more times than I got it wrong.
And when you were looking back on your performances, was it extremely technical stuff that you'd look at, very small details in the performance, or
Yeah, yeah. If I was racing, I'd be looking at my start or my drive phase or how I finished. Did I dip? You know, if I was jumping, I'd be looking at what is my run up like? Did I take off in the right place? Where are my arms? Where are my legs? Like, I think it's hard to explain the level of analysis that you go into. And going back to like the difference as a para athlete, I don't have any body awareness. So like this is a common trend. Like, a theme that ran throughout my career was we'd do a training session, my coach would be like, that was awesome. Do that again. Coach, I have no idea. Like I don't know what I did differently to the last 10 that were bad. So I don't know what's going on. Like the separation between what's going on in my legs and my arms to my left side of the body to my right side of the body, I have no idea what's going on. And then you put that into an environment that's extremely like a long jump is an extremely technical event. Right? People look at it and go, it's just someone landing the sandpit. But I think I could break it down into 8 different phases before you landed the sandpit. Well, I was only ever good at like 1 or 2 phases. So you're always looking at, right, if I corrected that little thing there or I did that better, I could be better.
But a lot of your learning and improving was due to maybe muscle memory and just repetition through what went right.
But that's what I'm saying, like I didn't have that muscle memory. As in, due to the nature of my condition, you couldn't build that muscle memory. Like, I could do something well, I wouldn't know what I'd done what that made that a good thing.
So without that, how did you improve?
I trust my coach. He had the master plan.
So
Right.
were you kind of very obedient to what he said to do? He gave you the training plan. You were like, yes, mate, and you did it.
I was very good at getting on with what I needed to get on with. But what I would say, and my coach said this before, the reason why we work so well, he understood elite athletics. I understood cerebral palsy. And he recognized that very early on. So I self-coached quite a lot of my journey in terms of tweaking things and what I needed as an individual. And he totally went with it. Right. So even our first interactions, I can teach you how to run, but I know nothing about CP. But you're the expert. So you lead on that area. And we just put this program together that, no other coach has coached me as well as him because he took the time to understand my disability and coach to that rather than going, well, this is what everybody else does, so you should do that. We had so much detail in what I needed. And I was also very, very good at just going in, doing my work, coming out. So, where I never looked at a session and went, oh, that's hard. 'Cause I didn't bother looking at sessions. Right. I trained in an elite training group. Number one question would be like, Coach, what are we doing today? I never asked that. Just turned up. Right. Cool. Do my warm up. I'm good to go. And I was in that mode. It was easy. It was a cycle.
Um, how's your relationship with pain and discomfort from your training and from your life in general?
It's a good question. I think certainly when I was competing, when I was training, I was able to push myself through a level of pain that most people would consider unnatural. But the reason why I was able to do that is every day of my life I'm in pain. Literally every single day. From the minute I wake up to the minute I go to sleep. Well, going to sleep is a whole different story. That's a challenge in itself. But when you live a life in pain, I always used to say this, there's nothing you can do in a gym that's going to replicate how much pain I'm in. So, in a sense, if you live life in pain, what's a little bit more? That was my theory, anyways. How bad can it be? You can push if every time you get out of bed it's a struggle, then you know this is fun. Like this is I look at it now and I go, sport is a game. Right? You either choose to play or you don't. I chose to play. It was easy because I'd made that choice. Like this is fun, right? You win stuff, you have a great time. Like it's not hard work. I never saw it as hard work, even if it was.
It's almost like a David Goggins mentality.
Mm,
Maybe, maybe.
I like that though. Like even it wasn't. I didn't see it as hard work, even if it was hard, because you had chosen to do that, and it was a game to you, so you decided to have fun with it.
I think if everything you do in life is difficult, or like if you look at your daily tasks and your daily task is difficult, so getting out of bed, having a shower, cooking your food and stuff, like this is sport. Like that can't compare. Do you know what I mean? Like I used to have this saying that I wake up in the morning, I wiggle my toes, and if I wiggle my toes, I know it'd be a good day. Everyone was like, "What are you on about?" Like, that's crazy. I was like, "No," because there was a time where I physically couldn't feel my legs, so that's a shit day. So the fact that I can feel what's going on, the fact that I've swung my legs out of bed, I've not had to stay in bed all day. Where there were times where I did. Well, what have I got to worry about? Like, what can you actually do to me in training? It upset a lot of coaches, right? When I change coaches and stuff, coaches want to break athletes because they want to see how like what you're made of and how tough you are. You're never going to find someone in a sporting environment that's tougher. I just refuse to believe that. So there was nothing you could do that would break me because nothing I've not already tried to do to myself. Do you know what I mean?
It's like when you are continually doing difficult things, those difficult things don't seem as difficult than they're normal, and then you're striving for more difficult things.
And also because of what you dealt with your condition, your baseline for what you thought you could endure was completely different to any other human.
Absolutely. The journey I've had to come on just to be able to walk, and the amount of effort and work that has gone into like having the level of physical function I have now to live the life I live now. Sport is easy because essentially sport is a skill. Like the more you practice it, the more you get better at it. That's just discipline. And for me, discipline was easy. Maybe not now, but back then, discipline was easy.
Why was it easy?
Because growing up, I did countless hours of like physio. I didn't have a physio because we couldn't afford it. But my my great grandmother, God rest her soul, when the doctors when the doctors told my parents that I'd never walk, she refused to believe it. Right? And I don't know whether it was her mission or whatever you believe in, you believe in. She decided that she was not going to accept that fact. And every day between my great grandmother, my grandmother, and my parents, we did physical therapy at home because we couldn't afford private therapy. And I was making improvements that medical specialists cannot explain to this day. And even I don't fully understand it because this woman had no education, like didn't read or write, couldn't have learned in a book. It was just innate. Right? She just knew that this was the right thing to do. So every day we was putting in hours of work into being able to like move my hands, being able to like just extend my legs, learning how to walk with someone holding on to me, like being dangled from ceilings and all sorts of stuff. Like we did so much work for me to fit into the normal world, not be that disabled kid that needed help with everything. So when you do that level of work every day, I guess essentially I've been training my whole life, right? So when I entered the sporting world, it was just a different type of training. And I guarantee it was a lot easier than some of the stuff I had to do growing up.
How's your relationship to gratitude despite all the difficulty you go through? Because it sounds like from what you're saying now, like you battled through so much with your condition that you were actually the extra bit of suffering you were kind of grateful for the sport because you had an opportunity to funnel that ability that you developed through the difficulties you've gone through into something where you could then go and win, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think gratitude's been like a big part of my personal journey. I don't know if I always had it or, we're all ungrateful at times. That's the human condition. But generally, I've been quite good at rationalizing things and going, it's not that bad. Or more often also, it could be worse. So I've always been quite good at looking at my situation, going, there's probably someone worse than you, just get on with it, rather than feeling sorry for yourself. Because the reality is, I've said this to a few people and they find me a bit harsh sometimes. No one cares. Outside of your immediate circle, like your mum, your girlfriend, your wife, your boyfriend, like whatever it is, no one cares. Right? The world does not care that I've got cerebral palsy or that my life is difficult. I'm not saying my life is difficult. There's a lot worse people, but the world doesn't care. So either you get on with it or you don't. and that's a choice that you have to make every day. It's not an easy choice, and don't get me wrong, there are times even myself I don't always make that choice, but for the most part I do because I have to. Because what's the alternative? What, sit in bed all day? Never me.
What was the process when you go from blowing your knee out in 2019, realizing that you had to retire? What was then the process of rebuilding that identity that you said you'd lost when you said that athlete Ryan, you could no longer be athlete Ryan?
Mm.
How was that process of rebuilding your identity?
That's fucking tough. It was really tough. Like, I don't know if I've rebuilt it yet, is the honest answer. Right, but I spiraled badly. Like major, major, major depression to the point like I wasn't Jack the lad, but when I was competing, I knew everybody. I was always in like an environment where I talked to everybody and stuff. It got so bad that I physically couldn't leave my room for months at an end because I wasn't that person anymore. I couldn't bear to like face the world, or everybody knew me as this person. Like everybody at that university knew who I was because the journey I was going on, the level of like self belief and self conviction I had. Like I'd be telling people 4 years in advance I was going to the Olympics because I believed I was going to go to the Olympics. Right? Everybody bought into my journey, and then that journey was over, and everybody knew the level of adversity I had to go through. So I couldn't bear to face people, and I couldn't really face myself given what I'd chosen to. Again, I chose to, but what I'd chosen to sacrifice during that time period, and the things that you miss out on, and life's not fair. But you sit there and you go, I've done all of that, and I've not come out with anything to show for it, which is how I looked at it then. Obviously, now you look at it and you go, do you know what? I had an amazing set of experiences, traveled to all these countries, met all these people, and it's maybe the person I am. But when you're in it, and when you were so singularly minded as I was, that was the end point. Like I would become a person once I'd achieved that thing. Right. So much was tied up in achieving that thing. When that didn't happen, I didn't know who I was. So for a year I spiraled. It was bad. Like alcohol, didn't look after myself, like just very bad. I was very lucky that like the main person in my life didn't just kind of see me as a waste man and took time to invest in me and help me get back on my feet. And then I went through a period of trying to like find a different sport. So like I was retiring at a fairly young age. I knew I was still in like physical prime, not old. I've got a good ability for learning. Let me just go and find another sport that I can get to Paralympics in. Right, so I tried all these different sports. Turned out I was good at all of them. Right? Everything I did, I was good at, except nothing filled that void because it wasn't track. And I was good at them, but I wasn't like world class. So like for example, I took up cycling for a while. Fucking cycling, right? How boring, right? I did sprinting, the most exciting sport. I jumped into a sandpit for a living. I'm getting on a bike. Like, what am I doing? I took up cycling because I knew I'd be good at it. Within a few weeks, I was doing the same times as like the Paralympic team because my power output was still nuts because I'd been a sprinter. But I just was too scared. Right? I'd go in the velodrome. I just couldn't get over the psychological barrier of like going up the bank and riding fast. So the fear meant I couldn't do that sport. I tried rowing for a bit. I was knocking out stupid rowing times, despite the fact that my left arm is quite severely affected. Just didn't like it. I did table tennis. Within a few months, got into the GV Academy. Table tennis is a crazy story. I self-taught myself to play table tennis in a bedroom with a robot, right? And my missus feeding me balls.
A
And
robot?
a robot.
What do you mean by that? Like
Like
the robot, you're playing against a robot?
bought a robot that would just fire out like 200 balls
Oh, right,
in
right, yeah.
3 minutes. You just change the direction of it. I like back up against the wall, so you got no technique because you got nowhere to move. Like but I learned how to play table tennis, got to GV Academy, was decent. My knee couldn't handle it. So that one's done. I tried so many different things. My most recent one was badminton. I gave badminton a crack for a few months, went to national finals, came fifth. It was looking like, from a pathway perspective, I could get there. So I was always searching for the next thing. And I guess where I'm at now, I realize the athlete journey's over. I've come to peace with that. It took me a long time to come to peace with that. And I think the three and a half years post knee injury, I hadn't accepted it. I was still trying to find what else I could do. Whereas now I've accepted that my athlete journey is over, and I take a tremendous amount of pride and joy from coaching and helping other people. I think that's probably an insight into why I'm so passionate about coaching, is that's how I can now have an impact on people and help people on those journeys. And because I've been through such a difficult journey as an athlete and as a person, and know that I can help other people with that. So in terms of answering your question around how I reshape my identity and stuff, I don't know if I have. I'm still working that out. I guess I've always had the mindset of try 100 different things, one of them will stick. So I'm very much in the trying things out phase, which when I was competing, I wouldn't have done half the stuff I'm doing now because I wouldn't have had the time. So maybe something that will come along that I'm passionate about, but the truth is, I'm good at what I do, doesn't mean I'm happy. Because I don't think anything will replace the feeling that athletics gave me. And I think it's more a case of just accept that. Try and find other things that can make you happy rather than searching for that feeling, because you're never going to get that again.
So what is happiness to you? Like, was it for you winning?
No, I don't think it was winning. I think it was a lot of my happiness and my sport came from pushing my body and my mind to places that I never thought was possible, and a lot of other people thought wasn't possible. So I guess it was more a case of the constant, you're constantly proving yourself and other people wrong. And that brings a sense of joy when I've ticked that one off, right, on to the next one. Maybe it wasn't happiness, but it did something to me and it worked. So yeah, happiness now, you know, I don't think there's, I look at life very simply. I've got shelter, I've got food, I can go to where I want to go. What do I really have to be unhappy about? I've lived in places where people have nothing. I've been in scenarios where I've had nothing. Like life is good. I might not be on top of a podium or whatever, but life's good. And it's like recognizing that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. It really is. Um, I want to ask, as me and Jacob are 18 and 19,
Hmm.
if we had 18 or 19-year-old Ryan sitting there, what advice would you give him? What would you say to him?
Um, be open-minded, because I certainly wasn't. I was very closed-minded. I had a way of doing things, and I thought, my way of doing things was right. So certainly be open-minded. Um, Strength of conviction, right? I think is something that's really important to me in my life now. Is if you believe something or you have a moral standpoint, or don't compromise that for anybody or anything, because it's not worth it. Right? If you genuinely believe and feel a way about something, I wouldn't compromise it. So have strength in your own conviction. And the last bit would be nice to yourself. Right? It's something that I've got wrong a lot in life, is be nice to yourself, because like life's difficult for all of us for different reasons.
What's next for you in terms of, like, you say that athlete Ryan's done, and you're into coaching, Ryan. Is that now the new focus for the next 5, 10 years?
I don't think it's a focus for 5, 10 years. It's been coaching's been a big part of my life journey. Whether it was my family coaching me how to move better, my coach had a massive like he's like my dad. Or at times he has been my dad. The influence he's had on me. So I've seen the positive influence that one person can have on people, and I like the fact that the right like it's all about finding your person, but if you can be that person for someone else, then that's amazing. So I've always been passionate about coaching, and I set I'm a very ambitious person, so I said I wanted to when as soon as I knew my Paralympic journey was done, I said I want to go to Paralympic Games as a coach. And I want to do it for two different countries in two different sports. So that's not going to happen in 5 to 10 years. That's going to be a life goal. But everybody says about changing the world and stuff, and the reality is none of us get to do it. But my goal is probably can I leave things in a better place than before I was here. And it's not about legacy or people saying, "Oh, he did that," or the brand is the brand. No one knows the brand. That's fine. But did I have an impact in the rooms I was in? Because the reality is, people like me don't get to go to some of the places that I've been to. So if every time I'm in a room that I shouldn't be in, I can change the conversation, or not even change it, but have like some small impact in it that, even if we all disagree, but you go home, you think, oh, do you know what? That guy said something. Maybe there's something there. Then I've done my job. So now it's just I'm still working it out. So I don't know what the goal is.
Because you're a basketball coach, but most people probably go down that route while playing having played basketball themselves.
Yeah.
But for you, is it taking the principles of your coach as a sprinter and long jumper and then transforming them into basketball?
Yeah, so I coach wheelchair basketball. I have coached athletics as well. And natural route would have been for me to coach athletics because that's what my career was in. But my partner plays wheelchair basketball. I learned a lot of what I know through her, and in my biased and humble opinion, she's one of the best female players in the world. So I've learned a lot through that journey, and being part of that journey, seeing the influence that I could have on her. And I fell in love with wheelchair basketball early on because it's a space of acceptance. Um, so wanting to have an impact and a legacy in that sport is massive for me because I'm a fan. But at the end of the day, you put me in a basketball hall for 10 hours with like doesn't matter what quality game. I was gonna say high quality games. Doesn't matter what division, I would sit there for 10 hours just watching basketball because I love it. So as a coach, I think coming from like an individual sport background to coaching team sports is really interesting to me. Like the whole psychology around how do you bring a group of 12 guys or 12 girls together that have nothing in common to get them to unite for a singular goal. But then within that team environment, coaching the individual to be the very best they can be, not for themselves, but for the team. So like for me, coaching wheelchair basketball is almost a bit like playing chess. You've got a variety of different pieces. Each player can offer you something different. And if you're really skillful as a coach, you can get the right thing out of that person at the right time. So I certainly don't have the most knowledge. I'm still learning the technical side of the game, and I think my philosophy as a coach is I'll always be learning, which is I think what maybe makes me a good coach because my mindset towards self-improvement. I think the day you think that you're a good coach is the day you're a bad coach because the minute you think you're good, you stop being open-minded to new things. For me, as a coach, it's a bit of fun, right? Fundamentally, it's a bit of fun. Can you have a positive impact on a group of young people or older people and lead them in a better place than before you was there? So going back to what we was talking about, can you have a positive impact on people? For me, coaching is not about athletics or basketball. It's human interaction and self-improvement. if you look at all athletes, they want to get better. As a coach, if you can be the person to help them get better, job done.
What separates a mediocre athlete to a great athlete?
I don't think that's a fair question. I'm no one to say whether someone's a mediocre athlete or a good athlete or a great athlete. I think there are character traits, and you see something in someone that you think he's got something. I'm not sure what he's got, or I'm not sure what she's got, but they've got something. Whether it's yeah, I look when I'm coaching athletes, I look for uncoachables, right? Have they got like a level of tenacity or fight in them that you don't see elsewhere? Have they got like an amazing temperament, like where they're never stressed out or they always seem to just be like nothing phases them? Have they got a super skill? Like, I'm not necessarily looking, are they the greatest athlete? Is there something in them that I can connect with, and can I bring it out of them? So it's not. I don't know about. I don't. I was a mediocre athlete by some people's standards, so I certainly can't talk about what makes someone great because I don't know.
What do you think those uncoachables were in you that maybe your coach saw when he started working with you?
Fight. I was a fighter from day one. I'll never forget it. Our first interaction, right? So I went to university, and it doesn't matter what course I was doing because I weren't there to do the course. I was there to
What
make.
were you studying out of interest?
What was I studying? So the first course that I enrolled on was international business degree. Because I've always been entrepreneurial, I've had businesses, other bits and pieces, and I've got that mindset. I wanted to be an entrepreneur, did business. Terrible degree. Terrible. Not for me. If you want to do international business, do that. But for me as an entrepreneur, it was not good. But anyway, went to university, contacted like I don't even know what you call it, like the student athletics team or the people that run like the university club said, I want to do athletics, by the way, I've got a disability. And like you can see like people thinking like, and you can feel the tension, which I hated. Right? And, like, we don't really do para athletics here, and it's like, well, fuck you. Like, I don't want to do para athletics. I want to do athletics. Like, the fact that I move differently has nothing to do with it. So telling me that you don't cater for that is bullshit, and I refuse to accept it. But I got turned away. Got turned away several times. I found out when they were having the elite athlete meeting and sat outside, right? Because I wasn't allowed in because you're not good enough, right? And I waited for the head coach to come outside, and I cornered him, and I refused to let him leave until he had a conversation with me, right? And I knew who he was. I did my research. I knew he was the guy that I wanted to work with. And when I cornered him, like, "Hi, I'm Ryan, blah blah blah. You're Harry." He's like, "How do you know my name?" Like, I knew who he was. So this is what I want to do. I believe you're going to be the guy to get me there. And we had a conversation. He's like, "Well, okay, what's your training history?" I didn't have a training history. I just lied on the spot. He's
Did
like,
you mix stuff up?
made it up. He's like, how fast can you run? I didn't know what a good time was. I just said a random time, right? And I think he could kind of see that I was chatting shit, right? But he said, "All right, just come to training on Monday, and we'll see where you go from there." And I just kept showing up every week. The training would get harder, and I think he's like, "I just want to get rid of this guy." But the fact that I kept turning up, I never complained. I did everything that was asked of me. Remember, I was with like an elite able-bodied group that was all training for what they were training for. So the fact that I was keeping up, not keeping up because they were faster and stronger, but I was doing what they was doing was impressive. And my level of ambition, because I told him what I wanted to achieve very early on, I wasn't just some journeyman that was going to like take the piss of your time and stuff. I was always there. You didn't have to tell me to come train it, right? You didn't have to ask me like my level of dedication, and it's easy as a coach to buy into someone that's got that because it makes your life easy. Like you don't have to do that much work. So as an athlete, as a coach now, I look for like who's got that level of desire. But even if they're not got that desire, who's got that level of something in them that means I want to put time into them. Because ultimately, coaching, if you do it well, in my opinion, you give the best of yourself to your athletes. Right? It's emotionally draining, it's mentally draining, it's physically draining. No one sees the amount of hours that goes in, similar to sport when you're competing, because for that person to be the very best, you've got to be their emotional support. You've got to be the brains that plans what they do. Like someone's life at times is literally in your hands. The level of responsibility for another human's career is mental.
I lose. I lose. I lose.
Yeah, very opposite to what we're talking
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Basically, we have this like feature at the end where Jacob finds an article about artificial intelligence or something that's gone in the world.
oh, cool.
We don't know whether it's real or fake. It's always up for debate,
Yeah,
and then we give our thoughts on it.
nice.
So if you're a new listener, this is where we do some AI news. Special one today.
It's a special one today.
It's always a
They're always
one,
special.
isn't
They're
it?
always special.
There you go.
Today we've got a couple in Mumbai, very busy people. So they get an AI bot to help around the house.
Doing what?
So doing sort of carrying food around and trays and
Carrying food around the house.
yes. So it also does cooking and
Have they got a maid?
it's basically a maid and helps to wash the dishes, stuff like that. And this bot is there because it's sort of like a prototype from a company,
Yeah.
and they've given it to this household
Is he winding
to
me
get
up?
some research.
I don't know. That's the thing. Right. Okay.
So it works out for both parties. And as time goes on, the bot gets quite friendly with the couple.
You can't feel emotions though, bro.
Is there anything on your screen? You just making this up?
No, there is stuff on my screen, yeah, but it's an unknown source.
I know it's was from Jacob's head.
And they communicate, and the bot almost becomes sort of part of the family gradually.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, they have to send it back to the company so
Yeah.
that they can see the results, which is quite sad for the couple. When the company get it back, they do checks all round to see what's happened for research purposes, and they discover certain cells around the waist area, and they come
Cells, like like animal cells or
to human
batteries?
cells, and they come to the conclusion that it was joining in with the couple at night. And that's this week's AI news.
Or so they were using it as a sex robot.
Well, that wasn't the purpose, but that's what the evidence suggests.
I don't even know what to say. Is this like one of your fancies or something?
No, this is a story that I found that I thought was quite interesting.
What are you typing in to find that?
Oh, who are these people? Are they like poor? Are they poor or are they quite rich? These
They've got to be
They're
something
busy, so they're probably
busy.
don't have time to do all these stuff. Like they get the
But they have
bot
time to shag
do
a robot.
yeah, but they need the maid to do sort of the daily chores and stuff like that.
Wow.
That
Would you
was
have a robot
interesting.
maid, Jacob?
Yeah, but I don't know if I'd go that far.
Yeah. Bloody hell. Well, whether that's real or fake, I don't know. Ryan, what's your vote?
Jacob's just made that up on the spot, mate.
Do you not think that's too in detail to be
Nah.
made up?
You're a very good storyteller.
There you
Right.
go. Well, thank you, Ryan. That was good. I think,
Cheers, guys.
yeah, I learned a lot today.
This was very inspiring.
Yeah, man. My last thing I'd say to people is the job's never done.
Job's not done.
Where should people go to look out, find your stuff?
I'm lazy on social media, so I've probably not posted in like 7 months. But there is an Instagram and a Twitter. Instagram is enabled, not disabled, and Twitter is enabled_change. If you want to reach out to me, And if you've got cerebral palsy, I might be able to help you.
There you go. Thanks everyone.
Really?
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.